going to talk about compliance of a foreign bank for offshore, how to get through it with minimum losses and within the shortest possible time. I'd like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to participate in this event. Just a few words about myself. I've been working in the banking sector for over 20 years. I mostly interacted with the Baltic banks and Latvian banks and European banks. So the compliance subject to me is I'm very well aware of the compliance subject because since 2019 I joined the Amond Smith company, and let us let us start talking about compliance and consider what it is all about, how to get through it with minimum losses and within the shortest possible period of time. So we're talking about compliance of foreign banks for offshore. We're not talking about the classic jurisdiction when talking about offshore. We're talking about any company in relation to any foreign bank. This word is a pleasant word, that's why we still use it. Unlike Natalia's optimistic presentation, my presentation made me think about the early 2000 when we started operating in the Baltic states. Not a single professional consultant or banker will guarantee the 100% methods to overcome compliance in European, American, or Asian banks. There are particular possibilities for us which we use to minimize risk factors, and any consultant that has recently come to this profession and saying that there's 100% guarantee doesn't really understand what they're talking about. What is compliance? Let me tell you a funny story. Back in 1994 in Washington, representatives of the largest US banks and invest companies have gathered up to meet with a representative of Fed, Ministry of Finances, and the meeting did not take place. The state officials never came because they had more important meetings to participate in. Right, that was 25 years ago. Right now, compliance is playing an even more important role in any bank. Compliance is actually imposed on everything and anything taking place or happening in the bank, opening bank accounts, terminating bank accounts, etc. There are 5 reasons for that. On the global level, there is legislation, anti-corruption provisions, and corporate ethics. All of that is, of course, in place. But the global reason number 1 for banks has to do with security. So the toxic funds would not be brought into that, they would not enter the system. Yes, they're talking about the global level security, but in practice, they are only concerned about the security policy of the bank itself. It's easier for the bank to refuse a client if they have suspicions that the client can bring in some toxic funds. You still remember the fines that the US and European banks had to pay for violating compliance requirements. Right now, compliance is along with what it was like before. At the moment, compliance is used as an immune system of the bank. Banks can actually banks have an easier time refusing 10 good clients than um, letting in one bad client, and banks of course are suffering from that. What is the structure of compliance? We need to understand this, to realize who it is that we interact with. The tier 1 is FAT, International Monetary Fund, Basel, and the Wolfsberg Group. Tier 2. Well, tier 1 is actually working out all the necessary recommendations and requirements, which are then brought down to tier 2, which is central banks. And then we get down to tier 3, which is compliance department of any bank, implementing its activity based upon the national legislation and international legislation. This seems to be a simple pyramid, but actually it has a lot of nuances and details. What is the compliance department's activity all about? It's very simple. The compliance department is the immune system of any bank. Theoretically, we can talk about the countering it filters out all the toxic funds. It doesn't let them into the bank system. You know, these three the system of 3 points: CDD, customer due diligence, as well as EDD, enhanced due diligence. Well, they actually are scrutinizing every transaction. There's also the KYCC, know your customer's customer procedure. Well, AML is including these 3 procedures, CDD, as well as on behalf of compliance, this checkup is not time restricted. That's why oftentimes our clients and customers are dissatisfied, and they ask, why is it that their account is open for so long? The second stage is enhanced due diligence. Is if everything is unclear here, then the procedure of opening the bank account will be stopped. EDD is quite a complex activity. They're scrutinizing your activity. They are trying to find out whether you have the relevant experience of beneficiary. And procedure number 3 is KYCC, know your customer. You need to provide your bank with vouchers, contracts, and descriptions of any of your clients that you interact with. And they can even ask you, how did you get acquainted with your client? And you will answer that you attended a conference in Frankfurt, or you participated in Bosco Conference, and that's how you got acquainted with your clients. The conclusion is very simple. You need to know your customer. oftentimes I hear the my clients are dissatisfied, and they're saying, why should I know about my client? Well, you should know about your everything about your clients. You're responsible for that, and these simple rules provide us with an understanding of how the compliance department is operating in any bank. What does compliance department of a bank consider? I would advise for you to follow one rule: be logical and simple in your judgments and in your responses, in your answers you provide to the bank. Don't use complex statements, but don't think that you should be overly succinct.
Сидят обычные мужчины и женщины.
Compliance department consists of simple men and women which are not supposed to understand your business, but they need to know something. If you are into a specific type of business, like you're growing up tenderines, etc. I have an example of opening up a bank account for one of our clients in one of the CIS member states, but the bank then could not understand why the account was opened. At the first glance, the nature and the basics of your business don't say trade and trading commodities. That was understandable back in 2004, but this kind of a description is no more understandable in our day and age. If you provide a clear definition, that will of course save your resources and time. The origin of your funds. The bank wants to see where did you get your funds to do your business. That's why they require excerpts of or they require for a certificate of the origin of your money. If you open up a personal individual bank account, you need to declare how did you get those funds. Identification of the beneficiary. This is not your passport only. This is much more than your passport. Nowadays, almost all banks, especially those where you would like to open up the accounts, they would like to see the confirmation of the appropriate experience you might have. If you're filming movies, for example, and you're declaring multi-million revenues, you need to confirm, you need to prove to them that you have the relevant experience. There should be appropriate connection with different types of business. Of course, a salesperson can migrate from one sector to the other as their activity is not very complex, but some sectors are quite complex, and banks necessarily consider the availability of proper experience with their clients. And when talking about identification of the company's identification beneficiary, we consider the CV. When people open up corporate accounts, I can tell you that when I open up a corporate account for my client, I sit down and I write my CV so as to embed all the necessary details in it.
Часто лежит административная или уголовная
You need
ответственность.
to understand that the banking officials or clerks are responsible according to the legislation, and once that bank clerk is when they consider that identification of the beneficiary document or certificate, the only thing they see there is the name and telephone number.
В Кубани примерно еще 200 до Владивостока. Чем он там занимался? Как он туда пришел? Что это за компания? Где она находится? Существует ли?
But you can say that in your CV you can actually indicate that you have like 100 branch companies in Vladivostok and 100 branch companies in Moscow, etc. But the compliance department has to identify how did those companies get there and what did they do there. Majority of the customers never pay attention to this particular point, and they provide compliance with an opportunity to actually start digging deeper. A good CV will save your time. If the beneficiary is realistic, but they did not pay enough attention to their CV, you need to sit down and do a good job compiling your CV, writing your CV, and or there is a company that is actually professionally capable of professionally writing CVs. The entire information embedded there actually allows to minimize the negative question of the more detail you provide in your CV, the better will be your image later on during the process. The next question is the chain of accounts. A couple of my clients could not open up a bank account because they could not answer this question as to the purpose of opening their bank account, and they were refused. So if you conduct a video interview, I always prepare my clients for a video interview. I explain what they should say, what it is that they should emphasize, how to listen to questions. The purpose of opening a bank account should also be quite simple and down to and very specific. For example, to diversify my revenues. Even if you are banned from somewhere, you can actually describe it in a very creative way. Why do you shift from one bank to the other one? Because the bank's tariffs, for example, have changed. The charter documents of the client company. You don't have to talk a lot about. You don't have to provide a lot of detail. Your options should be ready to use, and negative mention by the media outlets. If there are people that have the same last name as yours, if you have had some negative situations in the past, please think about them beforehand, so you don't have to spend a lot of time when you're facing the compliance department. Please be calm and poised, and always store all of your documents. Pile them up, don't throw them away, so you don't have to go back and retrieve those documents. One package of document will minimize your time and will make you relaxed. Let's consider what are the stages of compliance with every bank. The first one is the pre-screening of potential client, customer acceptance policy. Everything is very clear here. They consider the jurisdiction, the final whether there's a final beneficiary, who they are, what is the turnover. Seemingly everything is fine. The first stage is easy to pass. Next, the bank is requesting information, and the manager is starting to develop the case to be considered by the compliance, including everything: the beneficiary's identity, tax identification number, information on counter agents, final beneficiaries, documents confirming the persons controlling 25% or more of corporate of the company's corporate rights or interests, etc. The structure and types of the company's activities, and the availability of licenses, and the next stage has to do with red flags, the periodical monitoring, time periodic monitoring.
До сих пор почему-то масса людей считает, что если вы попали в экосистему любого банка,
many people for some reason believe that once they have got into the ecosystem of any bank, they can feel quite comfortable there. We constantly feel the impact of the compliance department. What does compliance do after the account is opened? They are following the new clients, especially during the initial
compliance банка всегда обращает
during the initial months of the client's activity. The compliance is always tracing where the funds are coming from or going to, whether those countries are banned countries or countries that are on the blacklist. There is a beautiful Latin American country like Colombia. The clients always had problems with products coming from this country. I would have to explain to the bank personally that yes, they are also growing roses there, and this business has nothing to do with narcotic substances. You are always paying 100, if you're always paying the amounts like 100 to 150,000 USD, for example, and all of a sudden you pay 1 million USD, then you have to explain it. If there are the loans are not prohibited, but loans have to They have to be used in a reasonable way. You need to sit down with the person and develop the necessary details pertaining to the loan. You need to insert, provide the agreement with with the table of payments, remunerations to be made on installments. Banks have to check out any one of your counter agents, theoretically.
Подвешивать эти микроплатежи на основной расчетный счет. Делайте выгрузку из других систем.
Don't include your micro payments into your account statistics. Don't think that the compliance department that bankers are your enemies. Bankers are actually your friends. If a banker is requesting you to meet with them, then take your time to meet with them and answer their questions. When interacting with compliance department of any bank, we need to consider a few points. Number one, the permanent nature of compliance. You need to understand that compliance will be there all the time. You need to adjust to the market conditions. You need to calculate. You need to hire appropriate staff. If you want to have good bank accounts in a good country, you need to comply to the rules of the game.
Предыдущий оратор очень хорошо описал возможность.
The previous presenter has provided beautiful solutions, but according to the practice, to the current modern day practice, this is rather temporary. Sooner or later, the compliance personnel of Ukrainian banks will learn how to operate in a quality way. The best way to go is to plan your long-term cooperation. Please be serious about your identification as the bank's customer. Provide your include
недвижимость.
File all the necessary documents to be submitted to your to the bank, and this is also this has to do with the second point, the source of funds and source of wealth. Virtually every bank that we can consider today requires you to explain where did you get your money from. The kind of explanations you see to the right on the screen are no more sufficient. They are no more accepted nowadays, and we need to avoid providing such explanations. So in conclusion, I'd like to I'd like to provide you with very simple and practical rules. I always repeat them. Always keep the excerpts from all of your banks. Banks have the practice that their banks can close down your account all of a sudden. Please keep all the documents, especially their originals. If you sold shares, if you if you were given a loan, etc. One of the several cases that we have implemented in a very simple way was an account that we opened for an Austrian customer. The client came to us and said that there's a good amount, several million USD, and I was afraid to ask about the details. And the person was asked in the bank as to what they did. They said, I didn't want to work. I just kept this amount in my bank. Point number 3. Be capable of writing very good quality of CVs. So the person that would read your CV would get a good understanding of how you actually attained to your success. Point number 4. Always explain. If some media outlets are mentioning you in the context of some stories or situations, you need to think well about your possible explanation of that. You should not, point number 5, you should not avoid meeting a banker. Of course, no banker is an investigator, but they're similar to that. You need to be ready for that meeting. The meeting with a banker should be prepared for in advance. Don't lie to them. You should be able to explain the situation by using the understandable words. Information, of course, can be of different nature. Point number 6, pertaining to the permanent compliance activity. If you get the request, please never linger with your response. Always immediately write a letter to the bank.
7 пункт. Red flags.
And be very simple and clear. Point number 7.
Наемные сотрудники, научитесь правильно писать.
Ladies and gentlemen, please learn how to write details of payment in a correct way. The name of the goods, the definition of the description of the goods and services, and the dates should always be there. This is very simple. Always indicate the location of where you provide your services. Point number 8. The payment from a correspondent bank can be delayed or set aside. Please consult with your bank beforehand. Point number 9. At the moment, bank accounts are difficult to open, and their opening takes a long time. And that's why you should know that a corporate account should not be the only one. You never know how the bank's policy will change around. You should always look for additional options with banks and payment services. And point number 10, of course, you need to use the services of professional consultants. This is right. This is going to save your time, your money, and your mood, and this will also allow to preserve your business and your bank accounts. Dear colleagues, I tried to provide you with a congested presentation if you have any questions to ask, I stand ready to answer them, because compliance is very difficult to talk about within such a short period of time. Thank you, Ivan. The questions are available.
Практики открытия банковских счетов.
They were available before the presentation. Here's the question
Евросоюза.
from the President of the European Union, but it sounds as follows: How can I get payment from Russian clients in rubles and spend them in euros in any European country? This is made difficult because of the sanctions. I think that this person doesn't quite understand the current situation. There is a possibility of receiving rubles. There is no difficulty whatsoever. Just as the question about the conversion of rubles into euros. I would rather ask, what is the person getting these rubles for? If he works as a museum consultant, then there's no questions. If he is getting these rubles from an entity that is sanctioned, then of course he will have a difficult time. There is a solution. We just need to understand the source, the origin of the rubles. Can you name a specific payment system? Builder Links, for example, is receiving rubles. It can issue a card for any citizen, for any EU citizen. Should we talk about a bank? There is a small Swiss Apstel bank that is actually receiving rubles from Russia. They actually open up a deposit account in rubles, and we can continue the list of such institutions. So my option had to do with TransferWise. I don't like them very much because they can easily close down the client's account. It's because perhaps they have a slightly different attitude towards us and our clients. But they're very good according to the assessment, they are one of the best options on the market. Our next question is as follows. Opening up a bank account for non-residents. Should we make an appointment with a bank? That depends on the bank and their policy in the area of opening bank accounts. If the bank has a policy to do everything in a remote way online, then that's fine. Some banks are for example, Caribbean banks are opening bank accounts online. Some of the banks have send their representatives to Moscow to meet with their potential clients there. For example, Astro Bank can open up an account and have a video conference with the client, but they always ask the bank account owner to visit Athens, Moscow, or Vienna to confirm their identity.
Или инвестиционный счет в 2021 году.
Which country and which in which country and with which bank should we open up an account in 2021? It's a good question. It depends on the purposes on the purpose and the amount of money you would like to deposit there. If you need a simple checking account without a deposit, you can come to Moscow or Kiev, and the question and the issue will be resolved. If you want to deposit $500,000 USD and consider the possibility of using this amount long term by yourself and or your children, you can choose a bank in London or Switzerland. For the most part, Swiss banks, the lowest possible amount with Swiss banks is $500,000 or 1 million. Also, the same is true about German banks. Everything depends on the amount of funds you would like to deposit to your account. A checking account is a very good option with Cyprus banks. So Cyprus is a good option when talking about the checking account. Thank you very much, Ivan, for your informative presentation.